We're going to turn our attention to sport now. Jackie's going to join us for this as well, because we're talking about cyclists who are pushing the government to invest in facilities to help more people get out onto their bikes.
Yeah, the first phase of the scheme reportedly saved the NHS over £13 million, and they want this next phase to save a whole lot more.
Yeah, they want the government to invest, don't they? They want £30 million invested in this second phase of their plan. It's called Places to Ride programme, and it was Britain's largest ever investment in community cycling facilities, first time round, launched in 2019, and helped fund, I think it's 150 community cycling projects. So they want more of that money. And we've been asking people how they feel about investing money in cycling.
Thank you very much for doing that. Yeah, we've had a few people get in touch about sort of the cycling, where they are, the provision available. As I was complaining, I often find that cycle lanes where I am end up nowhere. It's very difficult to get on the cycle lane, despite the fact that I live in London and probably has lots of provision for cycle lanes. So look, we've had Colin get in touch with his thoughts about this. He says that cyclists want £30 million. Fine, but how about a £25 a year licence fee for every bike on the road? Colin thinks all cyclists would argue against that. I'm not sure you're exactly right with that, Colin, because there are some voluntary licence fees, aren't there, for cyclists on the road. And the idea about having a licence for a cyclist is, of course, that then the cyclists can be registered and they know where the bike belongs to and who it belongs to. So if there's any indiscretions by cyclists up and down on the road, that there is some kind of recompense, some kind of comeback.
Yeah, and a long, quite thoughtful email as well from Ian Lyons, who's an ultra-distance cyclist. So Ian, apologies for me paraphrasing, but he talks about how he cycles more than 10,000 miles a year in the UK and abroad. So obviously really interesting reflections from him. Mm-hmm. He says he spends a lot of time riding on rural roads, commuting corridors and long-distance routes. So he sees firsthand, he says, where the conflicts come from and how they can be avoided. Essentially, he's talking about one of the worst problems, not being the behaviour of cyclists, but about poor road design. Yeah. He says in the UK, bikes and cars are often forced to share the same narrow strip of tarmac. That creates frustration and risk. And he says that in Spain, lots of the roads have proper hard shoulders, and those aren't painted cycle lanes that disappear at junctions, but they're wide continuous margins that separate bikes. He does go on, but that's sort of one of his thoughts.
It's all about provision, and just similar thought as well. The last one we're going to go through here, Dave from Birmingham says that he drives endlessly past empty bus lanes. He says it should make more sense to resurface the roads and make sure there are no potholes to make it safer for all road users, including cyclists. So look, people have lots of feelings and thoughts about this. Yeah. Clearly.
Keep them coming in, but we want to put some of those issues, don't we, to former Olympic cyclist and managing director of the British Cycling Foundation, Ed Clancy, who joins us now. Really good to have you on, especially someone so well decorated in cycling as you. And tell us a little bit, first of all, about this push for more funding to get people on their bikes and get out there.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. So, I mean, globally, I mean, you're speaking to an ex-Olympian. You obviously think cycling is the best sport in the world, but we've already touched on it's a great way of commuting. It's a great utility tool. It's a great way for leisure to improve your mental health and well-being. And, the bike is so much more than the best sport in the world. And in terms of the specifics of this programme, so looking back a few years in 2019, there was £15 million invested by the government. And, you've already touched on the fact that there's a lot of calls on funding pots at the moment. But the great news is that it was a massive success. And in terms of a return on investment, for every pound that was invested in that, it returned £6.5 of social return. And that'll be divvied up into multiple things, embedding healthy habits early on in kids, reducing the burden on the NHS, giving people the ability, the capability, the opportunity to learn how to ride a bike. So when they are in transport deserts where public transport's not great, a lot of underserved communities don't have access to cars and they won't have access to cars. If we can provide spaces that are safe and accessible for people, particularly children, to learn how to ride bikes, then, they'll always have this humble tool that they can use to get to education, jobs and opportunities. And for what it's worth, maybe I'm biased, but I think that's a good thing.
Ed, I think you might be a little bit biased. It's Jackie here, who does the sport. You say that it saved the NHS 30 billion. Is that because a lot of people who get involved in cycling, a bit like golfers, become slightly obsessed with it, and they are they're so healthy then for the rest of their lives, and it's saving on lots of things. But how do you quantify what it's saving?
Yeah, I only know some high-level stats, and so with that £15 million that was invested 5 years ago, there's already been a £13.1 million return on reducing the burden on the NHS over a 5-year time horizon. Now, you've got to assume that that will continue for many, many years and many, many decades to come. And, interestingly enough, before I was brought onto air, there was a little bit of chat about bike lanes and cycle lanes. And I think it's important to acknowledge that there's a lag time. That's a fact, Sometimes you can build cycle lanes and it'll take years and years and even decades before they reach full capacity. But I do work in the Combined Authority in South Yorkshire, and I know the return on investment from road schemes, and I know the return on investment from some cycle schemes. And, very broadly speaking, it's about a 1-to-1 ratio for the amount of money it costs to build new roads and the amount of social return you get from accessing jobs and opportunities and so on. Bike lanes are typically 1-to-4 to 1-to-20. So whilst it's not necessarily instant gratification, people like me argue that it's money well spent.
And you're suggesting we're going to get there as well, is what you're saying as well. Like the commitment is there to make sure there's more provision. We do appreciate you joining us this morning, Ed. Thank you very much for your time. And I think it's also important to say, like, getting out on your bike doesn't mean dressing up in lycra and being a super serious cyclist. Just getting out on your bike in any form with your helmet on, make sure, is really important.
Yeah, and choosing that as your kind of default mode of transport if it's practical.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Good to hear from Ed Clancy. He's one of our most decorated Olympians.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What a guy.
So many medals.
What
I
a
need
guy.
to get a bike.
You do. Well, I think I promised to buy you one, didn't I? I don't know why.
I don't know why.
It's my fever.
So
Yeah, you did. I heard it.